Greetings. You have landed on Moonday Monday. This is Phase 7, and I, Spark Vizsla, shall be your guide unto the stars. Now let's get you refueled and resupplied with some knowledge so you can get back out there and continue your journey into the stars. Now, tonight, Lady Selene will rise at around 3 a.m., at least within our area along this latitude, and she's gonna be going from 3 a.m. down to about 4 p.m. So run the graveyard shift, but you will get to see her as she's approaching her full moon phase, and what's left of her against the azure backdrop of the cosmic stage as she continues her journey. Well, before we get Phase 7 started, I won't be giving a table of contents because this will be a pure Space Dent recap. If you missed it, you're gonna learn a lot. However, firstly, I want to say thank you to all of the listeners out there and all of those who clicked a follow or subscribe button. I really do my best to step away from saying my subscribers or my followers or my listeners, and even you'll notice I really won't say, oh, follow me or subscribe to me, because I want it to be organic. If you want to be here, you're going to be here. If I'm producing good enough content, I believe you'll hit that like or subscribe button without me asking. If you're not hitting it and you're not interested, then that's my fault, not yours. You don't need to be begged to hit a button. However, those of you that do, thank you very much, and I'm happy that I'm somehow interesting you. Even if it's just, I just like to hear his intro, and then I click and blacklist each podcast after I listen to it. I don't know. I'm not sure what your podcast listening ritual is, but yeah. And to be honest, I even hate calling these podcasts. I want to call it a space cast or a moon cast. So, you know what? No intro, forget it. Let's just get started.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff! Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
So let's talk about the Dent Space program. Wow, okay, I really have high hopes. I keep calling it the Dent Space program. I don't know why I make that slip up. However, the Dent Space event was pretty much Star Talk Radio and TED Talks had a baby. This literally was like a TED Talk for space. So every 10 to 20 minutes or more, people would have an allotted time to give their talks. And this wasn't some really fancy schmancy talk, This was something of people from various fields. We had people talking about useless robotics. We had gamers like Scott Manley come up and talk about how gaming is changing the next generation and teaching people legit orbital mechanics. Then we had people talk about kids in space, and we had folks talk about India going to space. There was a bunch of booths in the Exploratorium. I'm sorry, it's not the Exploratorium anymore, but the Fine Arts Palace of San Francisco. So September 21st and 22nd, that's where Dent Space was. Now, there were a lot of people out in booths, so we had people like the Museum of Flight from Seattle. They flew all the way down to attend the event. Had some pretty cool stickers, too. We had Planet Labs, who is actually based in SF. I learned a really funny story about them. And it's not like, they're actually doing something on the side. No, it's literally a comical story I learned from but I don't know if I can even tell it. It's hilarious, though. I'm going to ask them if I can retell that story because it's amazing. From there, we had Pure Rockets, which is you may not have heard, but earlier this year, NASA was proposing, hey, let's send drones to the moon. Yes, drones to... Now, if you're like me and into FPV drones and whatnot, then you definitely see the excitement and appeal of drones on the moon. So that was pure rockets with Jeff. He gave an intro of the drone operating just with the propeller fans, not with the actual not jet fans, I'm sorry, not with the turbine engines, because, it probably would lift the whole table. So definitely got footage of that. From there, we talked and did a small interview with JP Rockets, who pretty much is one of the few people, well, they get overlooked, but even before, yeah, they've been doing it for what? Since the late 70s, I believe he was saying? Sending items to space. Now, if you've seen the picture of the ping pongs in space, that is them. That is JP Rockets. So they send up student projects for free. That's right, for free. Like if you're a student and you want to send something to space, or you know of a student that is like, yeah, I want to send this up to space, talk to JP Rockets. Go look them up, check them out. Wonderful people. Had a great team there. So, also from them, they had NASA Ames down there. They had Autodesk there as well as I believe they're called Urban Safari VR. And Autodesk was giving out the cardboard, like Google Cardboard. They have Autodesk Cardboard. So got one of those. So really super thankful. Me and one of their VFX guys or visual effects guys had a really good conversation. Super awesome. From there, played around on the VR system from Urban Survival or Urban Safari VR. And I really... Okay, yeah, Urban Safari VR, yeah. And so pretty much they had a really great setup. You can go and visit them in SF. They're moving soon, though. But either way... However, the people there interested me the most. We had really awesome conversations, and some of them were just like, oh yeah, I'm here from Google. Other folks were like, oh yeah, I just took this day off of work. I'm a member of the Planetary Society, and I just love space. Other folks were there just like, this is awesome. And that was awesome. No matter who I talked to, whether they were a speaker or not, it was an awesome conversation. It didn't matter what they did. Even the security guards there I talked to, awesome conversation. One of the janitors there, super cool guy. He went around on his little hoverboard, like cleaning up messes and whatnot. I'm like, okay, this is actually pretty interesting. So that's what I really feel will be the driver of this the most. We had a lot of people there. Including, NASA and whatnot, and people from various industries, but I don't think that was the big driver of this. There was a lot of good talks, and I'm about to get on those now, but the biggest driver is you. You drive this forward. I know it may not seem like it. It may seem like, it may seem like we don't have a say in the future of space and whatnot, and I can understand that interpretation. Even as a space podcaster, I feel like I don't really make a difference. But at the end of the day, I understand, like, if you water an acorn today, it's not going to turn into an oak tree tomorrow. So next year, or whenever they hold this event again, be it in SF or somewhere else, definitely spread the word. Try and make an attendance, not just to support it, but also to enrich yourself. So you, in turn, can enrich others on space literacy and space interest. There's a big talk I'm going to get into about that later, but for right now, we are going to talk about the talkers. Wow, where do I begin? And just as a heads up, I actually missed much of the first day. However, the second day alone, the talks from that, well, since I don't want to give you a day-long podcast, gonna have to choose just at random here because there were so many great speakers there. Also, good news, Dent Space has recorded those talks, and there definitely is the possibility of them coming up online in the near future. I will definitely keep you informed about that. I'm asking around like, hey, when can we see them videos? And I myself have done some videos, as you can see on YouTube, so definitely check that out. But all in all, for talks, who do I want to talk about first? Just at random, Kids in Space. That one actually pushed me to tears. I had a lot of emotions in these talks. I had tears, I had shame, I had joy, I had awe, I had excitement. So we had Mike Mongo talk about space or rather kids in space, sorry. So that was a really interesting talk, because you would think, oh, it talks just simply about, kids getting more interested in space. Alas, it was more so talking about kids actually going to space. And I know some of you are starting to think like, wait a minute, we've had kids go to space? I didn't know that. Why can't my kid go to space? Or if you don't have kids like me, you're wondering, why didn't I go to space as a kid? Because that's what I'm wondering. Why didn't I get to sign that field trip slip? But one thing I really noticed was he was talking about how relating it to the aircraft industry and how that started off. So, without me repeating the entire talk verbatim, he was saying how even in the early days, there were kids that would ride with their relatives, uncle or something, and they would fly in a plane. And this was news at the time, because it's like, oh yeah, a kid rides around with their uncle, blah blah blah. Oh, okay, pretty cool. But back then it was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool, and like today's news, it would end up fading. He was and like this, Mr. Mongo searched a long time to find this info, and he found it. And that's what got me wondering, because he was talking about how just that child on that plane ended up inspiring them so much that, not so much that they actually like saved up enough money to like buy their own plane, but long story short, they were a huge contributing factor to the defeat of the Nazi regime. And that's kind of a big deal. And people may say, oh, he probably would have fought the Nazis regardless. He might not have done it in the same manner. Like, again, that's a whole topic on its own. It's an amazing story. Long story short, because I want to talk about the other speakers as well. It definitely is interesting to see, like, oh, well, why hasn't someone like, let's say, Richard Branson, his kid... Wait, does he have kids? I need a fact checker on this podcast. Like, hey, I'm saying something, please tell me how good or bad it is. However, if you're rich enough to go to space, like for space tourism, like with Blue Origin or through Virgin Galactic, bring a kid along. You never know how that'll change them. Because pretty much ask every astronaut when they go up and see the Earth. Now, we all understand, this little spheroid that we are upon has imaginary borders and whatnot, and we claim our land masses according to whatever it's called, like be it America, Russia, India, China, Japan, Korea, or the UK. And we claim these bits of landmass on this corner of a dot in the cosmic stage as our own, and have so much pride about it without having pride for the spheroid itself known as Earth. Everybody who's pretty much went up and actually seen the Earth has always come down a bit different. Come down more informed, more willing to work with humanity as a whole. So imagine how imagine how an aircraft flight in the very early days of airplanes affected a child. Imagine what that could do to a child of today to see space and see Earth from way on high. The wonders that'll come from that person remains undreamt, except for by them. Now, I did go over a little bit in the time I had in mind for Mr. Mongo, and I'm not going to remember every talker's name. I do apologize. However, ironically, he also did go over on his time, but it was very well worth it, I assure you. And the one that comes to mind next was NASA. They definitely were talking about inviting the public, inviting small business to work with them. I know in today's world, or okay, not today's world, more on that, but in our country, in America, we tend to think NASA is spending too much and whatnot, and those of us that are actually aware of their budgetary situation understand they are getting less than a penny on the tax dollar. Actually, less than half of a penny on the tax dollar. I think it's going to be up to half next year, but we'll see. Sadly, most people don't really look at what NASA does with the commercial side. So they were talking about their Centurion project, or Centennial project, I apologize. And what interested me was SciShow Space had a video on this not too long ago about why astronauts have a strong handshake. Pretty much, there's a lot of pressure in those astronaut gloves you see when they go on their spacewalk. Pretty much, and it's not just that there's a lot of pressure, there's also a lot of pain when they grip and whatnot. And long story short, apparently they've had to get their nails removed in order to reduce the pain. I'm that's dedication. I don't think I could have done that. I probably would if I needed to, but takes guts. So we they were talking about how a company, I forget its name, had ended up designing a glove that avoided this and was much more comfortable but yet still very sturdy. And if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. Another speaker who came up next was touching on that, was saying how if you look at the International Space Station, it's cool, it does what it needs to do, but if you were a paying customer, if you were in the private industry, the ISS would not be okay. You would, given design-wise, somebody made the best way I can put it is how they said it. It's over-engineered, under-designed. So it's very good at doing its measurements, very good at that and whatnot, very good at accomplishing its scientific missions. 0 questions asked. However, there is the matter of okay, the design-wise isn't meant for humans too well. So moving on into the future, we'll definitely see how commercial space industries play a role in designing better space stations. So speaking of international, Earth to Orbit by Susmita Mahat. Okay, this one I'm going to terribly, but I'm not even going to butcher it. Susmita, she's the CEO and founder of Earth to Orbit, and she's done quite a few other ventures and whatnot, but she's getting in more into the space industry, and she gave a wonderful talk on India's place in the space industry. I won't go too deep into it, but I definitely can say it was interesting and very inspiring to see how she was talking about the ISRO, or rather ISRO, started off not with fancy crawlers moving their rockets to the launch pad or renting out their pads to other nations because they are very good, very well positioned geographically. They started off moving their really small rockets with bicycles. And I know we're so used to seeing rockets oh yeah, a rocket and it's going to be the size of a building. Back then, these rockets were teeny tiny. And they were moving them on bicycles. These weren't some government. Some of them did have some connections to government, I'm sure, but this was mostly hey, we think space is cool. Okay. Same with, to touch back on Mongo, he was saying how kids in Jamaica, Africa, and other impoverished countries, there's kids that want to be astronauts and work in space. But the thing is, nobody's really told them, hey, we have a space program. You can be an astronaut one day. No, they just like space and really want to do it. Same with India. They were like, we really like space. Let's do it. And so, while there was that moment of pride, seeing like, wow, just seeing the different countries, which at the end of the day are all a part of the state of Earth, just making it happen. And then there came shame. It's very... I'm still a bit distraught that it happened like this, but... okay, let me just disclaim, it's not a big deal, per se, on the large scale, but... Actually, no, it is a big... Yes, it is a big deal. So here's what happened. So she's asking questions like, oh, who knows about, the Mars mission that went to Mars? Oh, the Mars mission that went to Mars. Wow. Good job, Spark. Good job, Vizsla. So pretty much she was talking about the ISRO mission of MOM, or Mars Orbiter mission. And now she was asking, because she was making a point of how Western media in particular overlooks Eastern accomplishments, especially in the Southern Hemisphere. So a few people raised their hands. All right, yeah, a couple of people knew about the Mars mission by India. There weren't as many as I would hope, but there was like about maybe a dozen from what I remember. Okay, cool, Then she says, okay, well, how many of you know about the Chinese mission to the moon a few years back, right around the same time of ISRO sending out your mom, or their mom, or sending out the Mars Orbiter mission. I don't want to get in trouble with anybody in India over saying their mom got sent to Mars. And so when she asked about the Chinese mission, lunar rover mission, also known as the Chang'e mission, and I'm terrible with my Cantonese, forgive me, quite a few hands went down. It was literally me and one other guy. We didn't have like the cool stare-off thing, but we kind of did like look at each other like, oh, it's just us two. Then she asked, how many of you know that same orbiter, or that rover, also known as the Jade Rapid, died a few weeks ago? He put his hand down. I'm looking around with my hand raised. Even though, oh yeah, I'm so smart for knowing about the Chinese mission and its dead rover, I felt like an idiot. I felt ashamed. Not because I was alone, but because others were not informed. And that's really disappointing because, like when another country does something like Russia per se, we know about it. It's like, oh, hey, Russia sent up a satellite, or North Korea. We used to pay attention. Now we're kind of like, eh. But I'm not going to digress into the international portion of this podcast, but there's been a lot coming out of China. When I talk to people about, the quantum satellite they sent up, they're like, there's a quantum satellite? And I'm like, crap, okay. I'm like, oh yeah, they just sent up a space station. They're like, they have a space station? I'm like, yeah, the first one's about to crash over the course of a year or so. They're like, they had a space station? I'm like, did you hear about the moon mission? And their mind just explodes. Same with India. When you bring up India, again, not going to go over on this, but it definitely is overlooked, and that's a shame. But definitely going to touch more on that incomplete once I get to the international portion. Now, there were quite a few other speakers there as well that were super interesting. Now, one of them, I forget the gentleman's name, I believe it was Baez. However, he made a really interesting speech that got me interested more in satellites. Not simply like smaller satellites like Planet Labs, which is awesome. They have a cool story, cool people. I met with Mr. Kraft there, and they have a really gorgeous satellite. I wanted one, but then I realized there's a reason countries don't have satellites. As he was saying, like, satellites aren't something that people really own. That's a whole discussion on its own. However, he did break down how back in the day, how we now kind of take it for granted, but how they used to do measurements. They would send it up and open it up for a little while and then send back the data, measure it. All right, it was kind of shaky. All right, send it back, do it again. And the process, I can't articulate it quite as well as he did, but it was really interesting just to see how dedicated they were to the data. Now, he was also talking about how, just in general, satellites help out a lot, and how the James Webb Space Telescope coming online hopefully soon. Please, Congress, don't butcher this one. Is giving us better insight than previous satellites. And what's interesting with satellite technology isn't that, it's not like cell phones where, each iPhone or Android or Samsung is better than the previous one, where it's like, they keep getting stronger and smarter every time with each generation until, they blow up like the Galaxy Note 7. Sorry, I had to put that joke in there. I made it all 2 days of the conference, so I was like, I gotta get it into the podcast. There it is. If you hate it, click the X. I'm not even going to tell you what to click. Take it as you will. However, either way, they're not like cell phones. They don't just get slightly better and slightly prettier and slightly harder to fit into your pocket. They get different. So we have, with the James Webb, it measures, I believe, in the infrared, which is measuring things that we haven't been able to see before. With Hubble, which I believe is optical, measures what we can see with the visible eye. And then there's other satellites up there like the Stereo B, which measures the sun. And now this isn't just a thing that's, it's measuring things that we really can't use. It's building on top of each of them every time. And speaking of satellite images and data, there was a speaker from the Planetary Society who was talking about how you can go online and access NASA images. And it's always being updated too. If you check out NASA images online, the Planetary Society made a blog posting on September 22nd giving a link to those images where you can go and see all of them. And it was interesting because a lot of people would put their OC, like on DeviantArt. If you know what an OC is, you're probably on the internet too much like me. And they would put their OC into the picture for scale, at proper scale at that. And I found that to be really cool. I'm not saying I'm gonna do it per se, but I might ask around. Anywho, these images are available for the public. And it often gets overlooked because we're just so used to getting what's ever fed at us. But that information is there whether we know it or not. Now, speaking of things being there, again, there are so many topics I want to talk about, but I don't want to make you waste an entire day on this podcast or Space Mooncast. I'll find a better name. Either way, speaking of things being there, SETI. One thing we've come to realize is, thanks to AI and the tech advancements we've had over the past decade, is maybe we're looking in the wrong areas of space. And how do I say? Not so much as in, we're looking in the wrong parts of the sky, but we're just looking wrong. Now, thinking about it, I have my own tirade on it, but the talk was talking about how, given how we are, maybe if there is a civilization that is broadcasting radio signals, they probably also use silicon devices. If they use silicon-based devices and computers, they may be into AI as well. If they are into AI and had a head start of us, let's say by 1,000 years, there is a good chance they no longer are broadcasting in radio waves. Because if they did discover, let's say there is intelligent life out there, and I'm kind of interpreting their talk, they were saying how it may be AI, so we probably should look for non-organic life in terms of intelligent life. And that made me think, and I started thinking, I was like, well, if it is AI based, it's probably not going to communicate using really slow radio waves. It's probably going to use quantum entanglement, something we can't pick up with our current SETI array. So we might be listening for whale calls using our ears while sitting in Colorado. See what I'm saying? Wait a minute. Hold up. Time out. Hold up. I'll be right back. I gotta check how far whale calls can be heard. Okay, and question answered. Apparently, you can hear it above water, but it's not going to be very far. You would have to be coastal and nearby. But whale calls can typically go 1,000 miles. Anywho, what I'm saying with AI and SETI is we might be looking in the wrong place, which is understandable. That's fair. That's how you learn. But more on SETI later because China now has a SETI program. Now, one thing that really interested me was, and I'm kind of biased here, when I met Scott Manley, it literally was just like watching one of his videos. He's like, "Hello, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it's just like on the YouTube video. I'm meeting one." I don't want to call him an idol per se, but definitely one of the people who I look up to and respect in the space community. I respect everybody, but definitely him because he's actually like engaging and spreading knowledge for the next generation and the current generation. Now with him, it was interesting because, you're going along and then you see Scott Manley and it's like, he's just about as tall as I would imagine. But anywho, okay, enough idolizing him. He had an excellent talk, which I've recorded, and you are free to access in the show notes. Go to my Twitter page and look at that link called Show Notes. It will be pinned on my profile at SparkVizla. All one word, Spark Vizla. And he gave an awesome talk about rocketry and how it's teaching kids. And some of it, quite a bit of it was anecdotal evidence, but it was a lot of anecdotal evidence. And this empirical data pretty much was saying how kids were coming into courses in college, and they were coming in smarter than the previous generation left. And this is not due to, well, it is somewhat due to technology, but it was mostly, he was asking the incoming students, "Oh, well, what did you do in school? Did you go to AP Physics, or is your parent an astronaut?" They're like, "No, just play Kerbal Space Program." And that pretty much sums it up. XKCD gave a really great chart of their knowledge of orbital mechanics. It's like a little bit of a hill when he goes to study it in college, graduates, then he works at NASA, then it's like just skyrockets once he starts playing Kerbal Space Program. Which makes a lot of sense, because, you're actually watching it, you're actually interacting with it, you're actually seeing it in action, not just like every few missions that you're given the allowance to do. So seeing how that affects future generations will be definitely interesting. And one thing I've noticed, though, in terms of games that inspire entire generations, end up being confined to that generation. If you look at certain subsets of millennials, we kind of grew up, with the shooters and whatnot, Halo, Call of Duty, and then Battlefield. And it's like, all right, so like when the war happened and recruitment started going, it's like, all right, we're kind of used to playing the game. If you look at ARMA, that is built as a military simulator. I believe ARMA 2 is coming out, because apparently Valve doesn't allow a game to reach a third title on its platform. Anywho, so that whole game was built around military simulation. If you've played it, you already understand that, you're getting bullets whizzed at you, And you probably will just end up dying and respawning without ever knowing who killed you or how. Or you may get blown up without ever knowing who killed you or how. Or you're probably going to start shooting at in the distance at a blurry blob far away. And if it stops moving, you're wondering if it's taking cover and whatnot. So that translated into a lot of youth for when they did go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm not saying, yeah, our ARMA and other video games are responsible for our youth being prepped for the military. I'm not saying that. But it makes it easier to transition into. So if you look at Kerbal Space Program and Minecraft, I know, it's a kiddie game. And that's what I found really odd, because there's now a modification. Is it Redstone? I believe it's Minecraft Redstone is a modification to allow quantum physics in Minecraft. So, pretty much, a lot of people, I would ask years back at the office that I used to work in of Alameda, like, oh, hey, have you heard of Minecraft? And I wouldn't just ask anybody. I would ask, like, my fellow nerds, like, hey, we both like computers. Hey, we both like space. Oh, hey, we both like Neil deGrasse Tyson. All right, cool. Yay, woo. Then it's like, hey, do you play Minecraft? They're like, oh, no, well, my kid plays it. I can't really get into it. I'm like, Fast forward over the years, I'm like, I keep hearing that, oh, it's mainly for kids. I know one adult who plays it. And then Kerbal Space Program, I hear adults saying, oh, well, yeah, I tried it. And these aren't just like, oh, I have a kid, so I was forced to try this. Like, hey, I have a kid, and I love space. This does not apply to you, Scott, but you know what I mean. I've heard from quite a few varying things from, oh, well, it feels too much like work, because, oh, this and that, and it's super technical. To others being like, oh, well, it's not very realistic, and it's not scaled to Earth. Even though they do have mods to compensate for this, to make it Earth scale and whatnot. And then it kind of hit me, because as a child, when you play a game, you're not necessarily, you kind of do want to like win the game and succeed and whatnot, but you're still there having fun and along for the ride. With adults, however, it's not necessarily the opposite, but you're more so invested in success. Because once you hit adulthood, you are told that, oh, if you aren't succeeding at something, you are a failure. And in Kerbal Space Program, you are going to be failing a lot. And so we kind of have this mindset as adults, as if, oh, I really like this, but I have to really focus on making it happen, and that's like work, and even though it might be your passion, oh, well, I don't want to suck at it. And that's understandable, because you do have like other things to put your energy toward, kids, actual day job and whatnot. If you don't have an actual day job and you get to play video games like Scott Manley and have kids and whatnot and be totally cool and awesome, hey, that's awesome too. And it really got me though, because it's like, oh, hey, all these things that can teach you basic mechanics and improve your current knowledge of these mechanics, be it Minecraft or KSP, are overlooked. So it's going to be a very interesting 2 decades coming up. The next 2 decades will be very interesting, because the people you see online now that are like, hey, like those 12-year-old voices are like, hey, want to play Minecraft after we're done with this Dota 2 match? Okay, that was really unrealistic of me. If you're playing Seika 2, if you're playing Dota 2, that what I just asked would be in Russian, and they would be shouting it, and they would be feeding. Okay, let me pick a different game. If you were playing on... forget it. Forget that example. You know exactly what I mean. The kids you see nowadays, they're like, yeah, let's play Minecraft. Yeah, let's play Kerbal Space Program. 20 years from now, when they have jobs that are like, oh, they're part of Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic or SpaceX or Biggie Low or Vulcan Inc., and they're making things happen, and it's like, oh, this person has just had a settlement on the Martian colony and blah, 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 edit this. We're going to be like, wow, this guy is totally awesome. He must have studied hard at some Ivy League or had super family connections, and he'll just be like, or she. And that's the great thing, too. Or he or she will be like, nah, I just played Kerbal Space Program. Or I just really liked Minecraft growing up. That's all it takes. So, long tale short, Goddard was inspired by the War of the Worlds. And if he could make rockets from being inspired by a book, imagine what these kids today will do by engaging in a world of science and exploration. Just because we benefited from the Industrial Revolution does not mean we will ride the wave and be the forerunners of the cosmic revolution. And I think that's something very important to talk about, and that's what this international section will be about. And it's not so much of a chauvinistic, nationalistic approach of, oh yes, America must be number one. As long as humans spread out, humans spread out. However, we definitely aren't doing it at the same pace. If you look at the WOW signal, for example, not the WOW signal, I apologize, the recent signal we picked up and the one that Russia had discovered earlier. Now, for a while, SETI, the ones that pick up these signals, SETI was down for several months at a time due to maintenance and upkeep. And it's been said that it's a Russian military satellite that the signal was. I honestly don't know. I haven't seen the data myself. However, either way, if you look at the operations of various countries, and I love the one Mr. Tyson gave an example of, about how he was invited to Russia to help solve a possible problem of Apophis, of them Russia building a satellite and having a whole program to deter Apophis should it impact. And now Western media is saying, yeah, it's not going to hit. There's no threat from Apophis. Ha ha ha, look at Russia. And the thing is, if it did impact, it wouldn't affect Russia. It would affect much of the upper parts of South America as well as the United States West Coast. Well, I think that we should be the ones saying, hey, Roscom, Russia, come on down. We got a great idea, just as a contingency plan. But we didn't. We were just like, oh, okay. Even when the WOW signal and other signals in the past have come down through SETI, people, and somebody at the talk gave it a really good example of how, like, when they discovered this signal, the SETI signal, people didn't call. People always will ask him, oh, if you really find something, will you tell us? His answer was yes, a very defiant yes. Because, for one, it boosts funding. Two, when they do find something, nobody really calls. Like, when they got the WOW signal, they all were kind of expecting, like, oh, maybe they're gonna, like, we might get a call. But they weren't, like, jumping for joy, like, oh, we discovered something. They were just sitting and watching the data, seeing what else came along. The only call they got was from the New York Times. His mother didn't even call, for goodness sake. And they ran the story. However, nowadays, people think of, when they hear like SETI, or if you're a contributor at SETI at home, you see, oh, well, okay, good news, bad news. SETI is kind of like, okay, SETI is on life support. And that's super sad because, for one, great program. Two, it's kind of, again, as I was saying before, we may be listening for incorrect signals. They may not be using radio waves. They may not be built to use radio waves. They may not have ears to even hear radio waves. They may use infrasonics, per se, or something, which technically can be picked up by specialized radio signals. I'm not sure if, I don't believe SETI measures for that wavelength, and it might not even be able to spread that far. Either way. Point being is, okay, our capacity the only reason SETI is still around is thanks to Yuri Milner. Give him a thank or a like on Facebook or whatever social media, or send a very kind thank you letter. because this dude is pouring in $100 million into SETI over the next decade. And just a heads up, Yuri Milner, that's not quite an American name, and he's a Russian billionaire. He's a futurist, and what is it? The physics theorist, I believe. And he definitely has an interest in space and technology, and he's putting his money literally where his mouth is. He helps fund like cancer research, not just like, oh, the Susan G. Komen thing. Like, he legit is like, hey, here's $5 million if you can have some sort of like answer to this biological problem. Or hey, if we do discover aliens, I'll give out $1 million if you can make a callback signal. So that prize is there if you want it. If you want to make a callback signal, make $1 million like doing a great deed for humanity, do it. So thankfully, our arrays are much more sensitive now. However, China just unleashed the biggest radio telescope in the world. And this isn't just because, oh, they're trying to, it's not like, oh, they're trying to, I'm sure they are. It's not simply they're trying to spy. It's more so, hey, they're like, hey, let's also listen for aliens. China. I don't think I can articulate how shocked I was. I mean, I've known about its building for like a few years now, but I'm like, all right, maybe they won't go through with it, and maybe it's an ulterior motive of some sort. But no, they're legit serious. Okay, they just unleashed an awesome radio telescope. We are getting funded by a really generous Russian man to continue our SETI program. Think about that for a moment. I really, not to repeat that one guy, but I really need you to think about that for a moment. As I said before, the southern hemisphere and the east are really doing things now. And ISRO, they're definitely doing quite a bit as well. They have a mission for a lunar lander next year. Not only Team Indus, who is a part of the Google Lunar X Prize, but also the Indian government. And they also have an orbiter established. Now, this, of course, many will say, oh, well, they're doing what we're doing. That's the thing. Not Russia, but China only recently landed on the moon. Now they have a space station. Again, I need you to think about the gap of time from lunar rover to space station. Do you know how long that took us? It was like, hey, all right, cool, we gotta... Okay, Skylab didn't take forever, per se. But it definitely was like, all right, cool, we kind of could do it. For China's space station, it's like, hey, we got an automated cargo system, which in itself requires an infrastructure on it's not only the space station and that docking module, but also the actual launch vehicle itself. So that tells you a little bit of how they're building out their technology for the long run. And so they also have a docking port for a satellite. Now, with this one, I'm a bit interested because, okay, you can dock a satellite with it, they say. All right. Well, what if you wanted to dock with a cislunar vehicle? And cislunar is when you go from the Earth to the moon, or vice versa. So let's say they start mining the moon in the next few years. All right, they have a space station that can process those goods, deliver it onto the launch vehicle, like, let's say they have their own version of Dragon X, which comes up to the space station, automated loading of the minerals onto the Chinese Dragon X, and then boom, it goes back down. Again, I need you to think about that for a moment. Also, really late disclaimer, this is just me thinking in the long run. China may not even do that. They might just be like, yeah, we just have like a telescope, and they never do cislunar activity. Maybe it's even impossible for cislunar mining activity to occur between the space station docking and vice versa. Same for asteroid mining. It might not be possible. But I have a feeling if it is possible, they're probably going to make it happen. Same with ISRO. People will say India and China are in a space race, and somebody made a really good point about how it's not so much a race because what are you racing to? An asteroid? There's, what, millions of those. Okay, oh, they took over an asteroid over there. Darn, guess there's no more asteroids. Or, oh no, they're operating on a part of the moon that is counted as a heritage site in their national military. No, it wouldn't be their entire military, but their Air Force or Space Force now would have jurisdiction over that area. Okay, well, there's more parts of the moon than wherever the heck they landed, even if you land in one of the titanium-rich Marias. Okay, like the Jade Rabbit of the China rover did. Okay, that's great. Alright. Oh no, they own that area. Okay, go a little south, go a little bit west, go a little bit east, go a little bit north. You get the same minerals. So it's not really a race when there's such of a big podium where everybody literally can stand on the first place podium. It's one flat podium. So definitely interested to see like where they go with this, because now they China, for example, and I do bring up China and India a lot. As I've said in previous podcasts, China has a quantum satellite. China is planning on going to Mars. India did indeed beat them out on a mission out there, so I really was taken aback by that. China went to the moon, India went to Mars. So that definitely, it's not so much, even though they might not be direct or admitted competitors, there is a bit of rivalry, kind of how we have a bit of rivalry with the Russians, and that's okay. Rivalries can be friendly, but definitely really interested to see like where each of these countries take that. And just how I was saying, oh, maybe China will build out their space station to do the cislunar thing and whatnot. India also has that option as well, because there's a lot of investment going into India. I really feel India, man, never thought I would be saying this, but and no disrespect to India, of course, but India might be becoming a superpower. Similar to China, if not more, because a lot of investments went into China many, many years back, mostly due to their factories and whatnot. But let's say we started doing that, but for space. Amazon and other companies are like starting to build out down there because they see, oh, okay, we can do space operations out here for much cheaper. Remember how factories went to China because they were much cheaper? And oh, suddenly China has the most millionaires and billionaires. Huh. Correlation? I think not. No, wait, I think so. No, I think so. Yes, I think so. I'll edit that out. Anywho, so now it comes a question of, okay, where does America fit into all this? And that's the problem. I don't think we fit into this. If you look at any politician, count the number of politicians that have a science degree. I do not mean political science. That's the only science you may see in there. But to answer the question, two people have science degrees in Congress. Out of, 600 and something people? Again, this might turn into a meme if anybody has listened this far, but I need you to think about that for a moment. 2. If you look at India, for example, who's starting to do really well with space technology and growing, not all. They're admittedly in India, there is a bit of corruption. I can't say that, oh, there is no corruption in America. Ours is just really well polished and very well dressed. That's the only difference. They're a bit more out there with theirs. However, quite a few of the people up there have degrees in engineering, in physics. I believe it was, he was the chief minister of Delhi, and pretty much he had a degree in mechanical engineering. So, oh, Okay, it's like, hey, guy pretty much is over a city and he's like really science intuitive. I can't say we have the same thing. Okay, sure, we might have maybe a mayor, but certainly not a governor. I would love to see one, but that's the problem. Like, if you look at our leadership, we are not driving with science. We are ran by politics. And that's understandable. Oh, politicians are focused on politics. And more so law. If you look at most politicians, they have a law degree, which is cool for politics, not so much for the country that is going to move forward and remain a superpower. If you look at any country or any empire previously, they didn't fall because, they were just like super lazy and whatnot, or, oh no, like aliens invaded us. Okay, technically, I guess you could say nomads and barbarians are aliens, but most empires are overthrown by nomads and barbarians. Now, ask yourself, well, you don't have to ask, I'm going to ask you, why is this? It's not because, oh no, the barbarians are like out there doing like chin-ups and push-ups like every single day and like weightlifting to become some super awesome dudes and dudettes. It's more so because, oh hey, they've never known what it is, what it is like to settle down and relax. People of an empire typically don't want to fight, and they're more focused on their sciences and whatnot usually, and politics and governing people. But they aren't in the mood to advance and take risks. Typically barbarians and whatnot, when they do take over an empire, they actually improve, usually, not always, they typically will improve upon the sciences and the philosophies, sometimes depending on the era. This is where I'm going to make a call to action. We definitely can't rely on... I don't want to sound as if I'm promoting rights or anything. You can turn on mainstream media and social media and see that already. What I'm promoting, though, is a call to action. Pretty much, if you have an interest in space, if you work in space, if you own a space not a space country, I would love that one day. But if you own a space industry or space assets, make it happen. Start doing it, because the next 4 years, regardless of who wins, regardless of your political opinions, space exploration is not going to be easy. Not only due to American internal affairs, but also countries definitely will react differently than they have for the past 8 years under new rulership. With that, I have a terrible feeling space may be ignored. And that's not the best thing ever, because because, like, we kind of do need a platform of sorts to get to space. We kind of do, need a way to get out there and whatnot. So, we also don't... sure, you can sit around and do your thing and at home and whatnot. Still, like, if you have a job and whatnot, keep your job. I'm not saying, like, give up your job and, like, become a revolutionary astronaut and you're just, like, flying to the moon, like, for America or anything like that. I'm not saying that. But definitely, if you are politically inclined, start writing a senator. Start talking to your political friends. Start making connections. Because space, definitely will be overlooked. NASA's budget, depending on who we butt heads with, may shrink drastically. And if it does, well, maybe Cape Canaveral might stay open. Definitely Vandenberg, that is going to stay open. Thank you, ULA. But we definitely won't be seeing as many projects like, going to Ceres, going to Juno, going to Saturn, launching a new telescope to discover the secrets of the universe. Because if you can't... Here's the thing. People will often ask, what is the meaning of life? Well, tell me the meaning of the universe. If you can't explain the universe, might not be able to explain life. If you can't explain life, might not be able to explain the universe. So definitely, like on both fronts, like in biotech, definitely pay attention, progress on that as well as space. Because we're definitely making strides in that. It doesn't get reported in the news, because people are, getting shot and whatnot. Okay, people are always getting shot, but the media will pick, oh, okay, it's a slow news day, and we can pick shootings. Yeah. Anywho, definitely go out there, make connections, and get things done. Because at this point, humanity's transition from a terrene species to a cosmic entity is up to you. Nobody else. Sure, there's adventure capitalists out there, but if you look at anybody who has had a big influence in space, one of my personal favorites, Kepler, ended up dropping out, was essentially couch surfing. It was more town surfing for a while with his family. Super impoverished dude, but he really liked space. He really wanted to explain the motions of the planets and wanted to do other things. Met up with Tycho Brahe, who wasn't okay. Brahe wasn't exactly the best figure until his death began approaching him. But okay, that aside, his mother, ended up doing things and ended up getting in jail. Like I understand that, and I'm like, wow, and he still made it happen. Even like when he made a book, people ignored it. No, that was somebody else. I'm sorry, but either way, he made it happen. If you look at anybody who has made space happen, it wasn't by anybody of like royalty. It wasn't any great, I don't want to say great warriors haven't done anything for space, but it wasn't some like, yeah, I'm a super strong head cutting guy. Yeah, oh yeah. And here's how the motions of the planets work. It was people who just simply were interested in space. That's literally the only prerequisite they had. If you look at really great swordsmen, okay, they had a great knack for swordsmanship. It wasn't necessarily biological. It was more so, oh, hey, that's what they really like to do. They put their mind to it. Hey, royalty and tactics. Oh, and political strategy. All right, that's what they have a knack for. And they made it happen. Oh, hey, computers. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. Nobody taught them, oh, hey, this is how you make a multi-billion lifetime business that affects the entire world and changes generations. You don't go to school for that. That's why they dropped out. They just made it happen. I am going to ask you the same thing, and as well as hold myself to it, as I do with these podcasts. Make it happen. And it doesn't mean you have to go out there and pull another Galileo and discover some substance or like some 35th state of matter. Is there 35? Is it 27? Or the next state of matter. There's dozens of states of matter, by the way. However, do what you want to do with space. For example, I started this as you've heard before, I've started this podcast just on a hunch. I've always wanted to do something with space, and people have said, hey, you have a cool radio voice. I think it's okay, but that's just me. And I figured, hey, okay, Moon Express is going, and the Google Lunar X Prize isn't dead like I thought it was, so that's super exciting. Alright, maybe I should try and be an informative source of space news. 7 phases of Moonday Mondays later, here I am. Look at Isaac Arthur. Speaks like a true genius on any topic of space that I've seen. Look at SciShow. These aren't people who are like, I'm gonna go to school for 10 years and learn how to do the SciShow space. No. They just wanted to do it, and they made it happen. If you look at the amateur hobbyist, who often get overlooked, and this was also mentioned in the talk, they'll fly 35 hours or drive days, to get to meet up with real scientists and actually help on discoveries. Of course, this is never reported, and it's never really made a big deal of, but they are contributing to something that has a very real effect on the world. For example, if you went back in time to Volz, Einstein, and other geniuses who discovered relativity, electromagnetism, the battery, you wouldn't really be able to say, oh, like back then you couldn't say, oh, you could say, oh, your invention and discovery is meaningless. You could say it to each of them, but today you have a cell phone. That's probably not like the greatest thing ever, but if you think about it, you can access things across. That sparked a technological revolution. It took the computer revolution and miniaturized it. I need you to think about that for a moment. That's going to be a meme from now on. I'm just going to keep saying that. So I'm going to end this podcast on a new note, a call to action. We simply no longer can rely on governments to make things happen for us in terms of space. Sure, they definitely would be the biggest drivers and have the biggest resources to make a space race or a true space exploration mission happen. But at the end of the day, those decisions are made by human beings. Those human beings are you. And I'm not necessarily even talking about a democracy. We need people to actually make it happen. Whether you are a closeted space nerd, whether you own a space company, whether you work for a space company, or just a curveball space program gamer, or Star Citizen, lol, or Elite Dangerous. Definitely get out there and make it happen. And I know it may seem like, oh, well, there's nothing I can really do for the space industry, or I can't make my space dreams come true. Yes, you can. Make your dreams oh my gosh, I'm turning into him. Okay, look. If you look at anybody in the history of mankind that has made something happen, especially on the space theater happen, Galileo, Kepler, these people weren't, royalty or some super fancy, I'm going to make space happen and understand orbital mechanics degree holder. No, they just had a penchant for enjoying space and studied and looked into it. They made it happen. They contributed their life to making it happen. Of course, back then it was a much different world than it is today. But certainly, you can't say that, it kind of just fell in their lap. They actually contributed to making these changes. And same with you. It's not going to be Barack Obama or whoever wins next, or the prime minister of... No, India has a president, or the great leader of prime minister. What does China have? Okay, pretty much it's not going to be global leaders that are like, hey guys, I made a discovery on this space thing and now we have like quantum and space warp technology. No. The rungs of the ladder that reaches to the cosmic heavens are you. Even if you think, well, I have this idea for quantum detection, but they say quantum entanglement can't be broken, so guess I might as well give up. No. Don't give up. Sure, you may be incorrect, but you can learn something from that. So in truth, you're not really correct or incorrect. You're just aiding a process. So definitely be proud of that. Embrace that, At the end of the day, I don't see winning or losing. I don't see life or death. It just is. And if you keep doing, it will become. Okay, that was kind of awkward, but the main point is, get out there and do the damn thing. So, going to wrap up on this note, but for a change of pace, I'm going to end the show on a call to action. I'm not going to make a call to action for you to press a button or send this to people in your social circle. I'm asking you to act. I don't care who you are, what phenotype you have. I don't care where you're from. Do it. And you know what I'm talking about. If you've listened this far into the podcast or just happened to skip and landed on this point, you have an interest in space, science, and technology in general. That is great for the cosmic revolution. definitely get out there and make it happen. Don't rely on adventure capitalists. Don't rely on governments. They can aid in the process, surely. They may have a big influence in the process, surely. But if you look at any previous forerunner of space, be it Galileo or Kepler or anybody, even in Arabia, such as like the stars that are named for in Arabic names, these didn't come from people who were like super well off and super royalty. These came from people who just had a penchant of space. They didn't care about their current capital. They had something in their head and they let it loose, and that helped us get to the cosmic stage. It wasn't overnight, but you very well understand, you are the rung on the ladder up to the cosmic heavens. You are the rung. And understand, sure, like, you might not be the rung that's at the international traveling part, but you're the rung that gets us there. Don't doubt yourself. Again, don't rely on anybody else. There will be people, there will be those who help you. There will be those who dissuade and hate on you. Follow yourself. What you feel in your heart that you want to do for space or science or technology, get out there and do it. Even if it's not directly like space related, get out there and do it. If you have something in your mind you want to accomplish, make it happen. It's not going to happen overnight. It's probably not going to happen tomorrow or the next day or the next day, or might not happen for years. But years are going to pass. If you're not making your dream happen, you're going to be working for somebody who is making their dream happen. That's cool too, but why not make yours happen? I'm not saying quit your job, abandon your family, climb up Mount Everest, and shout to the heavens your great idea. No. Actually, if you do those things, that's, you're not even crazy. You're just like super determined. So if you were going to do that, channel your energy into making your dream actually happen. Even if you weren't going to do that, definitely channel your energy into making your dream happen. Again, I'm not saying you gotta like drop everything and pick up a physics book, but if you have an idea like, for example, I have an idea for a lunar colony. Okay, join the World Futurists Society. Join an astronomical society, the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. Join the Planetary Society. How do you think we got the light sail? That wasn't America and the government's coming together like, hey, let's build a light sail that can propel objects faster, closer to the speed of light. Yeah, no, it was a bunch of people saying, and one person saying, hey, I got an idea. And another person saying, hey, that's a good idea, but here's a hole in it. And that first person saying, hey, you're right, what if? And then a third person saying, hey, well, what if? And that's how it starts. Get out there and do it. You can. I know it may not seem like you can, but yes, you can. Not to, be all political. It's a great quote, don't get me wrong, But I believe that yes, you can, but also, yes, you will. That is the important part that is often missed. Because you will make this happen. You will. It'll take time. You may not even see the fruits of your labor within this lifetime. Understand that, first of all. You very well, what you do today, what you do tomorrow, and the next day trickles down like a wave into the future, far beyond your horizon. And that's okay. That's actually really good news. If the fruits of your labor bloomed from its flower today, that's great too. But is it spreading? If it blooms today and it begins spreading, awesome. Keep it going. So even after you're gone, you are still here with us and the next generation and the next one. With that, I want to thank you for listening to me for this long, as well as being into changing humanity for the better. So once again, thank you for your time. Definitely, now that you are restocked and reloaded, I wish you the best on your journey into the cosmic stage. Be well, friend. This podcast has been sponsored by nobody. Now, however, I do want to give mention to somebody who might be able to save you space. And no, I don't mean like they'll go up and like rent you a space in outer space and say it's yours for any. Pretty much Omni Storage, if you happen to live in the San Francisco area, well, look up Omni Storage, and I want to give you a code that will save you a bit of cash on your first month. And they have already super reasonable prices per item that are super low. So this will save you $15 for your first month. So if you're at your computer, get ready to type it in. If not, got a pen and pencil, kudos to you for being old school. I'm there with you, or just jot it down on your phone. So that is share dot B Omni, B as in black hole, E as in eclipse, O as in orbit, M as in Mars, N as in Neptune, and I as in ion. .com / D M period. I can't think of anything that starts with a D in space. Debris field. Yeah, there we go. Debris. Yeah, so DM. So once again, that is share.bomni.com / DM period. There's a period at the very end, just a heads up, okay? So type that in. It'll get you $15 off. If I can help you guys out with something, I definitely would want to. So I hope this helps you out if you're in the area and you can somehow make it work. Either way, I hope this has helped you, and you have a great day.